All right, so topic today, carb addiction. Carb addiction, it's something I wanted to make a short video on, try to keep this to 20 minutes. Um, it's something that majority of people suffer from, and it does not exclude me by any means. I've suffered from carb addiction myself, still do to an extent. If I eat processed carbs, I'll go down a bad slide and just eat ridiculous amounts of crap and then hate myself afterwards. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. Where to start? We gotta we gotta think primitively. First of all, carbohydrates, sugars especially, or processed carbohydrates, but they're nature's way of, there's several factors if you look at it, things that in nature that have a very sweet taste in general aren't harmful to eat. That's one thing that people, they're normally just eating animals, but vegetation, a lot of plants have ways of having toxins and different sorts of allergens to deter things from eating them. Okay. And this can go very deep, but we'll try to touch on factual, just some basic stuff so everybody can grab it. Like fruit, for example, the plants, the trees that produce fruit, they want you to eat the fruit. So they make the fruit somewhat healthy and tasty. They want you to eat it and go crap the seeds and spread the plant out. And in nature, people couldn't ever overindulge because you might be days before you found carbohydrates, months even, depending on seasons or where you're at. And you find a handful of little plums somewhere, and people get that is it's quick energy, a little dopamine burst, and you might not have more for days. Okay. And through the seasons, the fruits would be the ripest in certain areas, like the late summer, fall of the year for a couple of months. And people could put on some body fat to get through the winter months. It doesn't matter if you're in a tropical climate or somewhere like North America. You're still going to have a winter season where there's a lot of storms, there's no vegetation really growing. And then people were forced into fasting and pretty much just a carnivore way of life, other than digging up a root here and there or something. One example I always tell people is watch some Naked and Afraid, and you can see how people actually made it. But going deeper into the neurotransmitters, it's nature's way of getting us to pig out and store some fat, but yet spread the seeds. The thing is, like I had mentioned, we couldn't overeat. We had to wait for it to grow and then work our ass off to go find it. Just even to get something half the time, I have to just climb a tree, walk a mile, whatever. And it was in limited amounts that would eventually run out, and there's nothing you could do about it. And then we would have clearance time, right? And in nature, the fruits, the sugars in large amounts for periods of time are very bad for us, but they still weren't as effective, as bad as this processed shit that everybody's exposed to in today's life. And we can thank the processing giants for doing this. They know what it's done to us, and it's legal drug dealing. The processed sugars and the candy and the breakfast cereals and Pop-Tarts and all this shit. They get everybody growing up on this crap, drinking Mountain Dew, Debbie snacks, you name it. People don't even realize they're carb addicted because they've eaten carbs every day their entire life. And when they think they're hungry, they're not really hungry. They're craving carbohydrates. They just eat some and then they're fine, and they do that every day of their life. But then they try to cut the carbs out, you know, go 3-4 days and they are just start to crave stuff. So let's go back a little further. Humans even lost their ability to process fiber. We've been lied to about fiber, even, you know, these companies that sell this processed crap, they push fiber, they just get to grind up the whole plant and sell it to us and say it's whole grain and it's healthy. We weren't meant to eat a bunch of grains. It destroys our stomach flora. One of the biggest problems we have nowadays too is processed corn products. Corn is one of the absolute worst things out there. Huge crop industry, but that's because there's over 600% profit in corn products. And that's where we get the subsidized crops. It's not the farmers, it's the FDA. And the FDA is paid off by the food processing giants. Okay. But a few 100,000 years ago, we had an ice age. And people basically just lived on woolly mammoths. You'd find a big frozen woolly mammoth or kill a woolly mammoth and eat on it. And that we were strictly carnivore for 100,000 years or more. And we lost our ability to use our appendix. If you look at primates, they have a functioning appendix. A gorilla's is like 2 feet long. What does the appendix do? We were lied to about that. The appendix actually collects fiber and it breaks it down. There's bacteria in it and enzymes that break it down into medium chain triglycerides for brain energy. Okay, so these sorts of fats, even primates need that don't eat a lot of meat, for example. Now, we're aware that the Y chromosome, the male chromosome, is what dictates changes. Women are born with all their eggs at birth, all the eggs, and then each one has its predisposed DNA, and that it's telling every baby the same code. But men produce sperm every day. So over 100,000 years, let's say I'm 40 years old. In my entire life, I haven't eaten any vegetation. I haven't had one little sliver of fiber. Our body is programmed to save energy at all costs. Okay. So we have to think about that. It's key in there. It's programmed to save energy at all costs for survival. Okay. We didn't have grocery stores and gas stations and shit. So I go 40 years of my life without eating any vegetation. The code is I've been keeping this appendix alive for 40 years, but this dude hasn't even used it. It's going to slowly start telling the children this appendix is less and less important. It's not going to be as big and functional as it used to be after several generations. And after a couple thousand, 10,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 years of carrying on, our appendix is just this little non-functioning thing that some people have to have removed. Okay. That's because we were carnivore for that entire time, and our body had learned to digest meat. That's why all these plants and everything fuck up our stomach flora. Half the issues we have with stomach irritation and inflammation and bowel problems is the plants and fiber. And then we're told to just eat more fiber. There's a meta-analysis recently done that proved that fiber is useless to people. And people go, oh no, trust me, I've eaten just meat literally for months and months at a time. Your body figures it out and you will be regular as can be. You start throwing some dough and some, one of the worst things for me was bread. You start eating some, like, what are those things called? A bagel or something. And then all of a sudden you're stopped up. So we weren't accustomed to eating all this vegetation for one. It's not really that natural to us. But then for the last 10,000 years, people have eaten some carbohydrates. like I said, in nature, we didn't have an ability to overindulge, not until we started being able to farm and process stuff. And even then, breads a couple thousand years ago, it was like some hand milled wheat that had to be fermented. It wasn't flash cooked with a bunch of yeast and gluten and all this crap. It was just some hand milled wheat or grains of some sort. And then it was fermented, which pre-digested it. And the bacteria caused the gases to rise it. And then it would be baked and be like this hard loaf. And people worked really hard back then. It didn't affect them the same. It was already, being that it was like a sourdough, it was already easily digested. It didn't affect people the same. And fruits don't affect people the same, or honey, something that's natural. Honey, the bees' larvae develop in it. So there's protective qualities to it that aren't going to directly hurt you. Yes, it's sugars, and we only need, if we're, say, an athlete and we're lifting weights using fast twitch fibers, little bits for glucose disposal. It's nowhere near what some people thought it was. It's literally 20 to 50 grams a day, depending on muscularity and output. The average person that doesn't really work out doesn't really have any business eating a carbohydrate. And if they did, adjust energy sources accordingly and keep your carbohydrates to natural sources. Okay. Then, like a banana or something, you got a whole whopping 20 carbs in there. And it's not overly sweet. It's not as addictive. Okay. You can eat a couple bananas and be cool, right? You eat a Pop-Tart, let's be real. You want to eat 10 of them, right? And a lot of people, especially people that are vulnerable, they already have some chemical imbalances, ADHD, depression, things like that. They find happiness in eating these carbs because of dopamine. It's the same chemical that is produced when we do cocaine. It's the same chemical they've shown in CAT scans. If you're in love with somebody, you see a picture of them, you can see the dopamine bursts in the brain that affect the, what would be called the reward center of the brain. Sorry, it's getting to the end of the day, fumbling a little bit there. The reward center, it makes you feel like, oh, you won the lottery. You see this person you love, oh God, I love them, And that's why after you go through a breakup, there's this withdrawal period, and you'll start remembering the good times instead of the bad times, why you broke up. And a lot of people rush back into a relationship because they're not strong enough. But as you know, you wait long enough and then it subsides and you can get on with your life. These carbohydrates, these companies know this shit. There's all kinds of studies they've done. It starts when we're little kids going through the bank drive-through and get a sucker and, oh, you're a good kid, I'll reward you with a milkshake and this and that. And when people grow up in that environment, they don't think anything of it. And several generations go on. And I hear people say things like, oh, you got to let kids be kids. And well, feeding processed sugar to a kid is not natural. We're all guilty of it. I'm just saying, it's a fact. It's not natural. It's not good for us. You're just predisposing the person to a life of gluttonous problems. Okay. Coaching people, especially the general public, and unfortunately, not a lot of bodybuilders that can't stick to a diet because, quite frankly, they're too weak and they're off the carbs for a few days and they lose their shit and they go pig out and then they get back on the diet for a few days and then they lose their shit and it's a failure. They never get conditioned enough for stage because they don't have the mental fortitude or the desire to win enough to override the carb addiction. Okay. I was horribly carb addicted, and part of it probably is growing up in the welfare life where you're eating all the, oh God, kick cereal with skim milk and throwing a little sugar on it and bread and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Like that stuff is one of the biggest is probably the biggest downfall of American health, is shit like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And people never thought anything of it. They just thought it was part of growing up. Peanut butter's garbage, bread's garbage, jelly's garbage. You know, a lot of people think that eating these natural preserves, they're cooking down the berries, evaporating all the enzymes, all the vitamins, and cooking the sugars down. They're no different. It's processed sugar at that point. I don't care what warm, fuzzy label they put on it. If it's in its whole natural form, fruit's a little different. The sugars aren't as impactful, and the enzymes to help digest that fruit, stomach flora is one of the first things that affect all of our health, okay? The enzymes in it cultivate in our stomach that already are ripening the fruit. And if we eat it before it's ripe, we'll get the shits. Nature programmed it that way, so we don't eat it before the seeds are ready. Once the seeds are ready and the fruit's ripe, wolf it down, we digest it very well. And things that are a little higher in sugar and citric acid, things that are more acidic, that kill cell walls and things like that, there's a lot of vitamin C in them. The vitamin C it goes right along with everything and helps strengthen those cell walls and counterbalances some of that stuff. So that's why the whole fruits, for example, have less impact on your blood work. I actually use fruits and potatoes and rice as a way to bring people off the processed shit. It's like tapering people off of a drug addiction. It is the exact same thing. So you got to think of, we have this natural source, compare it to like cocaine. People think, oh, that's outlandish. No, it's not. These processed sugars are every bit as addictive. And if you look at cocaine in these jungles where a lot of people still live tribally, very, wild, whatever, there's these documentaries that'll even show you, like National Geographic, they'll chew on the plant leaves. And there's such a small amount in there, it just gives them a little boost and they feel happy. There's no repercussion health-wise. They'll take a break in the middle of the day and chew on some of these leaves. It just kind of gives them a little boost and some will to want to go do something. So when this happens, what happened with people that figured out eventually to make cocaine was they take a whole crop of this stuff and then press it and drain the chemical, get the chemicals out of it, dry it, and then they use ether to cut the ester off of it to make it even faster acting yet. And you have this pure drug now that is so concentrated, you get these giant dopamine bursts. You take nature's sugar, for example, and now we process this shit right down to this ridiculously high glycemic. Even some of the starches like corn byproducts are one of the worst problems right now for like gut health, cancer, heart disease, dextrose, maltodextrin, corn syrup, all those things. You're processing this into an extremely addictive source that has huge complications in health. You eat a piece of birthday cake or something, you're getting that, it's good and everything, and you get that dopamine burst, but besides that whole thing that just went in your body just for that taste and that dopamine burst, now we're gaining weight. You can end up with type 2 diabetes, dementia, depression, all kinds of mental health issues, infertility, cancer of all kinds, and it's number one for heart disease. We were lied to and villainized fats and meat for a long time because that was actually what made us healthy, and the corporate food processing giants didn't make money off that. They made money off processed starch and dairy. That's why they put it in our school system, public schooling. You have these food groups. People just honestly ate animals and plants, but now all of a sudden there's this grain group and dairy group, you know. People didn't think anything of it. This started back in the 1940s when breakfast became the most important meal of the day. The breakfast cereals really broke out. And then the vitamin crap, the amount of vitamins that you need in a day is also false. We get enough from some meat and egg yolks and you name it, that we're good, you know. And the vitamin C, even if the less carbs we eat, the less vitamin C we need. If you're a pure carnivore, you don't even need vitamin C. And that's a fact. It's just, you don't run into it. You don't have the acidity build up in the body that breaks down cell walls. So these processed sugars impact us in so many ways, not only like the drugs that are highly addictive that have these dopamine bursts, they have all the same properties, addictiveness inside, mental problems as that. But we also have now, they're even worse because we're sticking large amounts of these in our body and slowly killing ourselves, like I said, with heart disease and cancer and diabetes, end up with dementia. It's infertility. Men have extremely low testosterone levels. And our body, when we're used to running it on and it's used to getting these fixes every day, whatnot, our body is programmed for homeostasis. Homeostasis is where it figures out how to navigate through a day. And this is again primitive. We used to have to fight for life almost every day. There was always a chance that something could kill you. You could starve, you could die of dehydration. And when we were in a new environment, our body would make us run back to what it knows for safety reasons. And being that our body is programmed to save energy at all costs, when we're about to go into a fat burning mode and you've been pumping it full of processed sugar for so many years, it will automatically make you start craving that shit. And not only that, your dopamine levels, you're so used to this overstimulated dopamine level, your body does not, your brain does not respond to normal dopamine levels where you just get happy because you achieved something. You don't, that stuff doesn't work anymore. The only thing that makes you happy is a Rice Krispie treat or a candy bar. And I can say without a doubt, I have in my life, I don't touch the stuff anymore. I can't even eat a full tablespoon of honey. I tried it recently. I want to eat the whole jar. I had to switch what carbs I do eat for post-cycle glycogen replenishment. I had to switch to just eating like a baked potato with some olive oil on it. And potatoes have a protein in them that help you feel satisfied. They don't have the big blood sugar spike. So I can eat a couple small potatoes in a day and be good. And if you get cravings for, if I get cravings for stuff because I'm not touching it, it isn't to the point that I can't, walk away. I know if I have a piece of pie, I'm just going to eat the whole pie. And part of it was years of bullshit coaching where guys were pumping you full of sugars and stuff, thinking that there was some advantage to this. The supplement industry can kiss my ass, selling all these supplements that, like the intra-workout, post-workout crap full of dextrose and maltodextrin and things like that. The profit, they put about $3 into a tub and sell it to you for $40, and it's garbage. It will just straight up kill you. And that caused me to have these problems. So I'm going to say several years back, I switched myself to just, some whole fruits and a little white rice and some potatoes, maybe a yam here or there. And that's it, but my clients, I understand that they've eaten that crap since they were kids here and there, and all of a sudden as adults, like, what do you mean I have a carb addiction? I've seen people just straight up, no, I don't. And they go 3 days without carbs and they're losing their mind. even emotionally, their body will start feeling flighty, high blood pressure, anxiety, and these feelings will actually create thoughts. Okay. And people will start to justify, oh, I've done really good. I'm just going to have one cookie. Well, we're not stupid. When we've not eaten anything like that for so long, it's just like a drug addict. They go a week without it or something, and then they touch that drug, they're going to overindulge. You're sitting in the parking lot of the grocery store eating a whole sheet of cookies, and then afterwards there's this lull of what you just did. You're worse off, and now you're even craving the crap again with a full stomach. So that's why I just simply won't touch the crap. I just don't. And a lot of people don't realize it. Like, I would go to a family event and I'd be like, why don't you have some pie? Nah, I'm good. And people would actually get hurt as though like it was an insult to them that you weren't going to have some pie. Or one of the worst things is the people around us. We're trying to clean up our life and they'll stick shit in your face and they'll, I think it's funny. It's asinine, and it's like, we're adults, grow the fuck up. So, one of the things I do with my clients is, because of this, when I pull them off of all the processed carbs, and I use like things like potatoes or whole fruit as the carb choices to bring them down. And then from there, go for what direction we need to be going. So keep in mind, most people grew up on like cereal and things like that. And that was some of the most addictive shit out there. They would fortify it with vitamins. These companies basically said breakfast was the most important meal of the day. It's been known in many other countries for a long time that that's bullshit. And that was implemented on us as children since the 1940s. We've been lied to. And now okay? Look into the stuff, find your way. If you need me for some coaching, hit me up. All right. Till then, I will be making some more videos on this and that. Another thing that I use before I run off is Humanifort. Humanifort has the growth factors in it that construct our entire body from the time we are conceived till we're adults. All of these growth factors construct our brain, hypothalamus, adrenal cortex, pituitary, our skin, our organs, our bones, everything. And the growth factors that we're lacking in adulthood are in here. They help regenerate all of these things: the adrenal cortex, the hypothalamus, pituitary, upregulate insulin receptors, heal the pancreas. If you were to get your blood work done, take 4 Humanifort a day. After 8 weeks, go get your blood work done. You'll see a drastic change. So this time I'll be logging out. Have a good night.